Hello dear chess friends, I'm International Master Andrey Ostrovskiy and you are welcome to the third lesson of the series dedicated to prophylaxis and prophylactic thinking in chess, in which we will see how prophylactic thinking helps to reduce opponent's resources to maximum and hence to increase your advantage or at least not to lose it. This first position is taken from the game between Scampers and Tora. We can see that black has no weaknesses and has much more active pieces. Especially noticeable is the power of the queen on d1, which controls almost everything important in this position, limiting the queen on b2 and also challenging the only weakness in this position at the moment. It is the b3 pawn. So the position is quite annoying for white, but still black has to find the way to improve the situation to achieve something tangible. Normal plan is to attack b3 pawn, of course, and the first idea that comes to mind is to maneuver the knight from f5 to, let's say, a5, just to attack b3. Let's have a look. Knight goes to e7, intending to occupy c6 and then a5. So b3 will be attacked and looks like white has no defense. And true, if white remains passive, position will be very bad. But white has one active possibility here. So queen goes to e2, leaving b3 pawn hanging. And after queen b3, queen jumps to b5. And the situation changes rapidly. We can see the queen is already very active, attacking b7 and creating a sort of a checkmate on e8. So this looks very bad for black, actually. So instead of knight e7, which means the immediate maneuver to attack b3 pawn, for black it is much more interesting to start with the prophylaxis. And black played very subtle and very efficient move a6 instead. Simply controlling b5 square, as we can see, it is very important square. It is the only possibility actually for a queen to be activated in this position. And after this move, white simply has no active counterplay. Now the queen is pinned to b3 pawn forever, so it remains passive, and black can gradually improve his position. Let's have a look. In the game, white played g4, which created new weaknesses, of course, but what to do? For example, if knight goes to e2 here, intending to occupy c1 probably, just to protect b3 additionally, then bishop d2 deserves serious attention, controlling c1, attacking the knight, and if knight goes to c3, then queen e1, attacking this knight and pawn on f2, which forces knight to b1. By the way, as we can see, a6 controls b5, and in this case also prevents knight's active move to b5, which is also nice. So knight goes to b1, and now bishop is attacked, but it comes back to b4, and as you can see, the knight is simply dominated here. So white has a really bad position. If the knight goes the other way, for example, knight f3, intending to occupy e5 square, well, black can start again with one prophylactic move. It is f6, simply controlling e5, preventing the activity of this knight. At the same time, preparing activity on the king side with the help of g5, h5, and g4. And only after that to come back to the initial plan. So knight can go to e7, c6, and a5. No problems with that. White simply has no sensible moves here. So in the game, white played g4. Knight went to e7, knight e2, preparing this knight c1 idea, but bishop d2. After knight c3, black does the same, so simply queen e1. In this case, it is even more efficient because f2 is hanging with check, right? So queen f2 will be next move. So knight came back to g1, only normal move, and then just knight c6, already created a threat of knight a5. After bishop c7, however, a5 is not possible to occupy, but black decided to occupy b4 square, also very promising position, and white simply has no defense to meet all black's threats. So as you can see, all black's pieces are extremely active, all white's pieces are very passive, and white already has a lot of weaknesses. B3 f2, f3 square is weakened, the king is exposed in general, so the knight is about to jump to d3 with a great effect. So black gradually converted this position to a win. Let's have a look on the other example. This position arose in the game Vaganyan-Belavsky, and it looks very fine for black because black has very active pieces here, including this monster knight on e4. Heavy pieces are also quite good, and we can see that black has a chance to capture pawn on a5 and then to attack a4 pawn along the a file, just triple all heavy pieces along the file and gradually just to win. Pawn a4, pawn b4 is already a passed pawn, which is also a great piece in a sense of limiting the activity of white's pieces. So we can see this poor knight on b1 is limited. This knight is pinned to protect in c3 square, which is a nice outpost for black's knight. So this means the knight can't go away from b1. Actually, in that case, knight jumps to c3 with a great effect, and so on. So position looks very nice, and looks like why not just to take on a5, right, and continue with this plan that we already discussed. In fact, white still has some chances, so white's idea here is to play f3 first, kicking away this knight from the center, after which it will be possible to regroup the pieces to improve the situation by moving the knight to d2 easily. So black has to prevent that. Exactly in this case, black will save this great advantage and could gradually improve his position and win the game eventually. So black comes up with the great move knight to g5, creating a concrete threat of knight h3. It is a very annoying threat. After that, king is forced to f1, queen jumps to h1, and well, black simply continues with the direct attack against the king. So it is necessary for white to play h4. Now if knight goes to h3, white has a square h2, safe square for king, so knight h3 makes no sense, but black's idea was different. So black simply provoked h4 move just to come back to e4 with the knight. And now we can see the difference. So after h4, g3 square is vulnerable, so white has no chance to play f3. That's the point. So f3 is prevented. It was the only sensible way for white to try to improve the position. Without this f3, white's position is simply very, very bad. In the game, white played knight d2, because it was the only way to continue development, and after knight c3 we can see that rook is attacked. If it occupies c1 square, then knight e2 is possible with the fork and winning the exchange. So black simply increased his advantage. So knight g5 provoking h4 and coming back to e4 helped black to prevent white's single normal idea to improve the situation, to get rid of the knight on e4. Without that, white is simply very bad. Let's have a look on the other example. This one is taken from the game between Vaganyan and Dvoretsky. We can see that white already has an advantage in the center because white simply has more pawns in the center. White's pawn d4 is very annoying because it helps white to control a very important c5 and e5 square, so it limits the activity of black's pieces. It also limits the pawn e6, which makes bishop d7 quite passive. So it is a typical Catalan position in which white has very powerful bishop on g2, white has a good center in the perspective, so white can play e4 at some point and just to increase the presence in the center, grab more space, and maybe continue with the movement of the pawns, maybe continue with the d5 breakthrough, and so on. So it looks like white just has to complete the development. It is the only drawback in white's position here, and position will be simply much better. In fact, it is not true, because black, as you can see at the moment, despite having very passive pieces and ugly looking ones, has a active possibility. So it's possible for him to play something like knight a5, and then to continue with the c5 undermining move, which will help black to improve the situation, that will help black to get rid of white's d4 pawn, and taking into account that at the moment black is a bit better developed, that might be a big problem for white. So white has to completed development, of course, but the way preventing this knight a5 followed by c5 possibility. So Vaganyan played very good move. It is bishop to d2. It improves the position of the bishop a bit, but what is more importantly, this reduces black's counter chances to maximum. So if black has no access to a5 square, well, it will be almost impossible to play c5, because whenever knight goes somewhere else, for example on b8, it won't be a tempo move, just retreating the knight. This will give white a chance to occupy e5 square with the own knight, which will be extremely annoying. The knight will be simply very active there, and in addition to that, bishop g2 will have an access to b7 square. So black castled, and now white came up with another active prophylaxis. So he played rook to d1, improving the position of the rook and creating this indirect pressure against black's queen, which means that, again, if black whenever manages to play c5, well, after opening the d file in many lines, there will be a problem with the queen, with the bishop on d7, so white will have additional resources connected with the knight e5, trying to exploit the pin along the d file. So a multi-purpose move and quite a natural position for the rook in Catalan pawn structures. So exactly at this moment, when black simply has no sensible moves, right? All the pieces are placed very, very ugly. So black has to find something, but it's very hard to do, because knight a5 is prevented. As I said before, if knight goes to b8, then knight jumps to e5, and white simply attacks b7 and improves his position. So black made a move queen to e8, going away with the queen from this d file, which will be potentially opened, to be honest, inevitably, because black has no other plan than just playing c5, okay? And here, white simply calculated all the variations accurately and understood that knight a5 followed by c5 is no longer a big problem, and simply completed the development with the knight c3. Exactly with this order of moves, starting with the prophylaxis bishop d2 and rook d1, white managed to prevent black's only sensible plan. But black did not understand probably all the subtleties of this position and came up with this counterplay. But to be honest, it is very hard already to find anything else for black. Queen went back to d3, black played c5, and now very concrete decision. D takes c5, bishop takes c5, and now it's not hard to see that, well, black's pieces are not coordinated, which might be a sign of different tactical possibilities for white. And it appeared that yes, white has a very nice tactical resource. So b4, attacking the bishop and decoying the bishop to a vulnerable position. Bishop takes b4, and now knight goes to e4. Very strong move, attacking bishop on b4 and challenging the knight on f6, which protects the bishop on d7. So now we can see how important it was to occupy the d file in advance with the rook. So if, for example, bishop takes d2, then first of all, knight f6 check, pawn takes f6, and now queen takes d2, attacking bishop d7 and knight a5 simultaneously. So double attack, black is losing. If knight takes on e4 instead, then bishop takes on b4. And oh my god, just have a look in this position. How many pieces are hanging in black's camp? So almost everything is hanging. Very nice. So in a game after knight e4, black played bishop b5, attacking the queen. But this was also predicted by Vaganyan, and he played another brilliant move, queen to b1. Attacking the bishop b4 second time and creating a pressure along the b file. So after bishop took on d2, which was forced because if bishop goes away anywhere else, then knight a5 is hanging. So okay, bishop d2 is forced, but now it loses a control over d6 square and knight jumps to d6 with a great effect. The queen is attacked, the rook is attacked, the bishop on b5 is attacked as well. So queen goes to e7, knight takes c8, rook takes c8, and now queen takes b5. So white has an extra exchange and much better placed pieces, so white managed to convert this advantage to a win. Thank you very much for your attention and see you in the next lessons.